Welcome back, All Sports West New York. My old buddy Vic Carucci is in the studio with us. You like that when I do that?
I love that.
That
No
goes
one
back
says
20
that
years,
way.
Vic. Goes
No,
back to.
I actually got to say something. Phil Simms, and he must be must watch this show or watch this back in the day. Phil Simms addressed me the same way on the phone.
Really?
He says, Carucci. And I said, it's not bad. I said, but have you been taking lessons from Bob Kaczynski?
Well, Phil's. He watched me from afar.
He's a wannabe you.
All right, you're back in town. You're covering the Bills. They had the bye week. You've done a lot of analysis. So, when they had the week off, they're 5-3. And everybody's talking about, geez, with this schedule, they can really make a run. Suddenly, on one day, Sunday, the Chiefs and Miami Dolphins both look like playoff teams.
Yeah.
So these next two games are really big games for them.
Yeah, I think this chunk of schedule, Doug Marrone likes to talk about the season in quarters. And I think that's a smart, methodical approach for a coach. The rest of us look at the whole thing. We're going to look at the end of the year, and we're all saying that stretch where they have to go against Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady is going to be the killer stretch. But really, I think it's very difficult beginning with Sunday against the Chiefs. Chiefs are playing well. Andy Reid does a good job of keeping that team in games, keeping games close. Alex Smith is playing with some efficiency at quarterback, which is something we didn't see from the last opponent the Bills faced, the Jets. And then you got Miami coming up 4 days later. That turnaround is always tough, and I think it's tougher when you're going on the road as a Thursday night team with that limited preparation. And we saw how well the Dolphins played against San Diego, who at one point was thought to be one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what shocked me. The Chargers, when they came into Buffalo, looked like a better football team.
Oh, yeah.
And we know what the Bills had already done to Miami.
Right.
But the way the Dolphins – that's the way the league is now. Look at the Denver Broncos.
Yes.
I mean, they go into New England, they look like an also-ran.
Yes, they were everybody's top team in the NFL, everybody's power ranking #1 team, Peyton Manning MVP of the league. And right now, the best case is to be made for New England all of a sudden, they were left for dead. I mean, in the first part of the season and prior to facing the Bills, it was the wide open AFC and an opportunity for Buffalo to jump in there. But we saw what happened in that game, and seeing what happened against Denver now, I think, has a lot of people assessing it that New England is still here and everybody else, not just in the AFC East, but the entire league, it might be here. And if Denver was the best, and you saw what they did to the best, impressive. And not just from a Tom Brady offensive standpoint, but the way the Patriots defense played against Manning was so impressive.
Yeah, they look very tough.
Yeah.
Now, earlier in the show, we saw Doug Marrone. He obviously didn't take the weekend off. The guy just looks exhausted. His voice is weak.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he spent every waking moment, reviewing, the video from the first 8 weeks, self-scouting, trying to figure out what to do. Obviously, the first place they've got to start is they've got to figure out how to shore up this offensive line.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's any shoring up to do because you can only work with what you have. You're not going to reach out and find outstanding players available in November. It just doesn't happen that way in this league. The trading deadline's passed. And I think the concern has to be that you look at the depth and you think of a name like Cyrus Kouandjio, a guy who comes in as a second-round pick on a line that's performed as poorly as this one has pretty much since early in the season, and he's not on the field. That's a problem. It's a problem in terms of your personnel assessment. Did you really miss on this guy so badly that you can't find a spot for him now? We saw what happened at the left guard position with the injury to Chris Williams, and then Cyril Richardson gets in there, and now Craig Urbich's in there. But it's been a problem on both ends, on both guard spots. And frankly, I don't think the tackles have played especially well throughout. I think Eric Wood has had his problems, especially against this Jets game, and I was surprised to a certain extent. Jets have a good front, but I didn't know they were that good to make it so difficult for him. So how do they shore it up? Schematically, are there certain things you can do? Some of what you hear from Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive coordinator, has to do with transitioning from the type of offense that suits Kyle Orton and the pocket passer that he is and the way he checks into different plays versus what they were doing with more of a read option approach with E.J. Manuel and how to transition that. So I think some of that, I think schematically, physically, execution, whatever, a lot of that comes together. And, Bob, I can't tell you that I sit here optimistically saying they're going to find answers in these final 8 games.
Perfect setup, though, to my next question. You could explain the league has changed greatly over the last 10, 15 years in that practice time that they're allowed to put these players out there and actually put them on the field has been limited. So everything you put in is in the off season, or I should say in training camp. Once the season starts, they're very limited as how many reps they can bring in new players and get them instilled. They can't. It's not like you can put in a new offense. Explain a little bit about how the new NFLPA agreement affects that practice schedule.
It's such an excellent point. Because it's affecting things going back to the offseason and through training camp. There are limitations on the amount of hours players can spend at the facility. Never mind how much time on the practice field. We're talking about hours in meeting rooms and everything else. And then camp, where the hitting is so limited, the amount of days that you can have where pads are on and there's some level of contact. And every former player, our mutual friends who played for this team back in the day, Bob, laugh at how things are going. And you hear the former players who do TV analysis and such also scoff at the idea of how easy it is on these players because of limited work. And I think it does show up on the field. I think now you're saying, okay, it's not a problem for New England. Wasn't a problem for at least Denver up to the point that they faced New England. But for the most part, you've got some teams that play exceptionally well. And your talent overcomes a lot of that. But when you're a team that has some younger components, and the Bills certainly have that, some rookies who are key players on offense and younger players, they need as much time as they can get. And yes, you're limited. So trying to catch up in the course of the season is very tough.
Vic, sit right there. We're going to take a break. We'll come back more with Vic Carucci right after this.